There's just easier ways to make money that require less operating hours, less employees, less CapEx, less susceptible to consumer whims, higher margins, all the reasons why I like these other industries more. But Google, you're going to come across the top 100 franchise list, the top 50 franchise list from different publications. All those companies are paying to be on the list. It's a PR move. There's so much noise out there.
How can you help us, though, continue to help you? First, please subscribe to the channel. Like us. If you listen to the audio version, leave us a 5-star review wherever you can. If you see our posts, please share those posts, share the content, and link back to our law firm website, which helps us to continue our SEO marketing and grow our firm and help small business owners. Jon, thanks for joining me on the show. And let's get into your background. By the way, Jon, where are you located?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. Hot Atlanta. Is it
That's
hot?
right. Back and forth. We were down in Nicaragua earlier this week visiting a nonprofit, and it was a little warmer down there, so it actually feels good here in Atlanta today.
It got to 90s yesterday in New Jersey, which is a little odd, but yeah. And I told you I love Atlanta, right? I got cousins that live in Alpharetta, so they're down in that area. All right, so why don't we talk about your background in business and things you've done and how you got into franchising, and then we can talk about advice for our people second half of the show.
Absolutely.
Make sense? All right.
Yeah, Mitch, first off, thank you again for having me, and excited to be here. My background is similar to a lot of your listeners. I spent many years in the corporate world, working for the man, and had a great run. Very thankful for all of that. But I always had that desire to be a little more entrepreneurial. So, the way that worked out, start off in consulting after college, went back, got my MBA, worked for a large corporation for about 10 years, but had this itch to get out and do something else. And I wasn't sure what that was. And, I really fell into franchising, had the opportunity through some connections to step in as president of Shelf Genie Franchise System. It's a large national Inc. 500 franchise company. And I got to run the...
Like franchises would install
custom pull-out shelving in your kitchens and pantries. Exactly.
Got it.
Ran all of our home office teams supporting our franchisees across North America, and really fell in love with the franchise model through that experience. I just saw how all these diverse backgrounds could come together under a shared system, shared support, and be set up for success as newly minted business owners. So, fast forward, I ended up partnering with the founder of Shelf Genie. We spun off eventually. We invested in franchises ourselves. I'm a multi-brand franchisee now myself, across different industries.
Still own franchises?
I'm sorry?
You still own franchises?
Absolutely. I've got 4 of them. So, primarily in the property services space, as well as health and wellness, which we can touch on more. But multi-brand franchisee, and started the consulting practice alongside that about 6-7 years ago, and have just had it's been amazing. Been able to help hundreds of clients step into business ownership and help thousands evaluate business ownership. Not everyone moves forward, but absolutely love what I do. Very, very active in the space. I work with over 600 different franchise brands out there, and we're always adding to that, and just across a wide variety of industries, and love helping others discover what I discovered myself.
Yeah, I think franchising itself attests to the fact that planning, putting things down in writing, having systems in place works. So if you're not a franchise, a lot of small businesses don't put those things in place. They kind of do some ways. Maybe they have an employee manual. Maybe they got some spreadsheets. But, franchising makes you do that because you have to put the franchisor wants a business plan. They got to see what your plans are, what you're going to do, and your financials and all that type of stuff. And then you kind of go along with the community and you follow the secret sauce or the formula or whatever. And I think I'm always talking about, putting things in writing and planning and so forth. And people think it's a broken record, but the whole franchising industry is a testament to that. Now,
and I was going to say, not every franchise is created equal. Just like any industry, you've got good players, you've got ones providing a lot of support to their franchisees, and you have ones that aren't. And so that's where we come in to try to help our clients find the right ones that do all the things that you just said.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the problem that I find. If I find somebody struggling in franchising, very often it's because they get no support from the community, from the franchisor. And that, I guess, is something you look for, right? When you're evaluating, they're not just evaluating you. You should be evaluating them.
That's exactly right. And you need to be willing to follow the system. I've had hundreds of clients be successful in franchising. I've had a few that weren't. And in those cases, it was usually the franchisee side where they thought they were the smartest guy in the room, and they went in there and they didn't run the system. It's like, why'd you get involved in franchising, right?
Exactly. It's not for you to reinvent the wheel. That's why you're doing it to begin with.
It's about going out and executing. That is the beauty of the franchise system is, You've got the support from the franchisor on the sideline. You've got a community of other franchisees that are living the same thing day in, day out. It's like a built-in mastermind
Right.
exchanging best practices. But then you've got, the playbook. The marketing's optimized on day one in a lot of cases. You've got the technology stack. So you're really able to shortcut your way to success and start on third base rather than having to learn everything the first time, as you would as a startup.
Yeah, and put all these systems in place yourself. Your POS system and your handbook and I mean, people don't realize like how much goes into a business besides like the selling the product is just like the culmination of all these things, right, that have gone on. That it's like a very small part of the business. I mean, obviously sales drives the business, but there's a lot of things behind it. And some people are just overwhelmed with doing it. And I think you're right. They try to, I don't need that. I can do it myself. I mean, how hard could it be? But we know it's hard, right? We know business success and business failure rates and struggle rates are very high, higher than they need to be. Do you know any statistics on the success rate of like franchised businesses versus independent business owners? Any
Yeah,
statistics
I'm
on that?
hesitant. I used to cite statistics, but honestly, I don't know how credible they are. And, I've seen stats around 92% of franchisees are still in business after a couple of years, whereas more than
Yeah,
50% of startups. But I don't want to take that to the bank because I don't think there's good data that really
right.
exists. But no,
Definitely
there's a
higher
reason
though.
why banks are much more willing to lend to franchises
Right.
versus regular businesses,
Yeah.
right? That
No question about it, right? Well, because they have something to compare it to. Okay, well, if you execute and you do the things you're supposed to do, and we know the franchisor is successful and has 600 locations or whatever, that's pretty good for a bank.
yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to you just coming in with some stupid idea and they're like, all right.
Absolutely. And to your point, I mean, you're talking about all the things that go into a business. If business ownership was easy, everyone would be a business owner, right? It does take
Yeah,
work. And a lot of franchises
right,
will market themselves as semi-passive, semi-absentee, executive model. And the idea is you put a manager in place day one. Now, about half of our clients go that path where they are literally outsourcing the management of the day-to-day because they know the franchisor is supporting that manager. However, I never want to sugarcoat it. I want them to go in eyes wide open to, hey, if you have a great manager in
right.
place, this is very doable. If you don't, you're still going to be involved. I call it semi-involved instead of semi-passive because again, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it because you can make outsized returns, but it usually requires more effort than other investments.
I mean, you have to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. First of all, if your manager suddenly leaves or dies or whatever, you better be prepared to know what's going on. Plus, I've had clients that had, they signed a franchise agreement, maybe a development agreement, right? Because a lot of these franchises, they'll say, listen, you can open one location, but we'd like to see you develop northern New Jersey or, whatever it is. And they get a regional manager and they think they trust that. And then they discover the person stealing from the business because they have total control over the books and everything's going on. They're sleeping with one of the managers in one of the other stores. I mean, all kinds of I've heard the craziest stories, but it's always because of absentee management. I'm not suggesting that you can't, because I think in franchise, a lot of franchises, very often you don't really make a lot of money unless you have multiple locations, right? Because the net profit of one location may support you, but you probably have to be the one running it too,
Yeah, if you're
right at
paying
the
a
same
manager,
time.
oftentimes it is a multi-territory, multi-location, and that's what a lot of our clients will do. And they want to have a path to scale, and yeah, you've got to cover your fixed costs before you start dropping to the bottom line. So,
Right.
a lot of our clients will do what I call franchise stacking, where it's even start with one franchise brand and then buy others over time. And there's some
Yeah.
synergies there, oftentimes on the back end as well as the customer end. Sometimes they're looking to diversify within that portfolio, but I've got clients that are doing tens of millions of dollars, in some cases, and yeah, the majority are still working their way towards that. But you can
Right.
really build some large empires over time with the right
Right.
franchises and then putting the right people in place.
Yeah, no, I know some of the older franchises like Dunkin' Donuts and things like those guys have 50, 100 locations. These are the ones I've met in New Jersey. And but at that scale, you reach a different level, right? Because you can have more management in place and so forth. But I think people have to be careful. Look, it's the same thing. If you just open a business, right, and you try to open multiple locations, you're going to start to get those challenges as well. Maybe more so because you don't have systems in place and so forth. But you still have an issue. If you own a coffee shop or a bagel shop and you buy 2 or 3 or 4 other locations, you're going to have the same problem, right? You're going to need a manager. You're going to have to trust that person. You got to put systems in place to make sure they're not stealing from
Yeah,
you, you
a
know?
lot of the industries our clients are getting into are things that don't even require a physical location. So all those examples we just kind of talked about
Right.
are brick
Good
and
example.
mortar, retail, customer facing. A lot of them are more service based. I think about like in-home senior care or youth soccer or mobile
Right.
pet grooming or home and property services. There's been no area that's been hotter than home and property services.
Yeah, I hear that. I just met
So
somebody
much
who's
smart
doing that
money
too.
flowing
Yeah.
into that space. Private equity
Right.
is getting involved. There's just so many niches. When you look at cabinets and flooring and roofing and pool cleaning and things that are needs based businesses. Dumpsters. Some of the businesses I'm invested in. I've got a asphalt paving and line striping business. It's a parking lot, non-sexy,
Yeah.
non-trendy,
Oh, yeah.
will always be needed, right?
No, but I mean that I know some families in the area. They're not franchises, but they started a business just striping and lining, and now they're getting like government
Yeah.
contracts. I mean, they make a lot of money. So it's I also always felt, and I don't know if this is true since the pandemic, but like the dry cleaning business was always like a mom and pop shop type of an industry. You don't see any. I think Tide had a brand at one point, but you find a lot of these like cottage industries where it's always been like local. My uncle's father, so he's married to my aunt. I don't know if that makes his dad, not my grandfather, not my great uncle, maybe my great uncle, but anyway, he passed away. He used to be in dry cleaning, had a couple locations, a little van and whatever, did his own thing. But I always felt that nowadays I don't know if it's as sexy as it used to be because people aren't just dry cleaning their clothes as much. We don't we're not wearing suits and everything like that. So yeah, I think that I think it's an interesting analysis of a business or an industry. So you said you have multiple brands. Like how many brands do you own right
Yes,
now?
I've got 3 on the franchisee side, and then I'm invested in one on the franchisor side that I'm pretty involved with. But I mentioned
Oh,
the
okay.
line striping and asphalt paving, parking lot business. I've got one that provides temporary walls, like containment walls around renovation projects and construction sites. It's kind of like an equipment rental B2B business.
Mhm.
I've got
Sure.
one that's in the health and wellness arena where we provide 3D printed inserts and insoles, for shoes, for footwear. A lot of
Oh, sure. Like Dr. Scholl's
yeah,
type of
but
stuff.
custom using again 3D printing and all
Yeah.
this technology and or
It's like orthotics. People have I have foot problems
exactly.
and I need that stuff. Right.
Exactly. And we
Exactly.
cater to kind of the older population there too with that business. But and then on the franchisor side is one that's similar to the Shelf Genies called Art of Drawers, where it's pull out shelving for kitchens, pantries. Just added our 35th franchisee, growing really fast. But yeah, no, we've never seen so much interest in franchising. Our biggest challenge today, Mitch, and I work with over 600 different franchise companies. Our biggest challenge is the good opportunities sell really fast in good markets. And so I'm
Right.
always trying to work my relationships with the franchisors to get my clients ahead of other candidates in the
Turn
pipeline.
people in. Right.
We've got no
Right.
no
Well, it's
lack of clients, it's lack of opportunities at
no,
times.
sure. Well, it's a reflection of how many people are going into
Yeah.
business
Oh,
nowadays because people don't want to work anymore for companies. They're like, oh, they take advantage of us. We don't want to do that. And I could be and then they realize that maybe being a small business owner is harder than we realize. And then they go and then they see the franchise or they talk to a friend who's in franchises or
yeah.
whatever.
And probably half of my clients that reach out say, hey, we've been looking for an existing business to buy. There's a lot of content, a lot of talking heads out there talking about buying
Right.
existing businesses. That can be a great proposition in some cases. But here's what I continue to be told every single day. John, I've been looking for a business for 4 years, 5 years. I've been under LOI 6 times. Due diligence didn't
Yep.
shake out. Someone outbid us. The change over and over. I mean, finding a business takes a lot of time and it's a needle in a haystack. Most of these people then say, wait a minute, here I am paying a premium for an existing business, assuming everything is going to continue as is.
Assuming the numbers even make sense or the documentation's there or
Exactly.
whatever.
Assuming the key team members don't leave. Whenever you have a change in ownership, you're going to lose key team members
Always a problem.
or
Yeah.
key customers. And here you paid a premium for the business. So a lot of them are waking up to the fact that, hey, maybe franchising is a better path because here I've got the support. I'm not paying a premium necessarily because I'm starting from scratch, but I've got a playbook, I've got the manual, and let's go to town and go execute. And all the shared, the lead generation, the optimized marketing, the things that technology stack from day one. They don't have to recreate the wheel, and yet they can put a thumbprint on the culture and on the key team members rather than inheriting someone else's team.
Right. Right. And see what kind of support you have from the top. And now I know that I've talked to some franchise sellers, let's say, and some of them represent like existing franchisors, which is more like business brokering, I guess, right? you're doing only new franchisee
Well,
locations, right?
I can do resales too. I can see the resales in my
Oh, you
system.
do.
But here's what happens: there are very few franchise resales that are attractive opportunities because,
Obviously, because why would you be
well,
selling it,
and
right?
because those get bought by other franchisees in the system. You have this built-in internal M&A,
Street is what-
as I call it.
Yeah.
I've personally bought other franchisees out. I've also sold to other franchisees. That's a very,
Right.
very common path. These deals never hit the open market because another franchisee buys them first. So you don't see a lot of good opportunities. But no, we've got visibility into all those. And every now and then we'll do one. It's just
Right.
there's usually not too many attractive ones.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because if it was that good, the franchisees would have, grabbed it
Exactly.
up. And yeah, if it's not good, it goes to the street. Look, I've had a couple of clients who are now very big. One of them's particularly in the mold and water restoration
Yeah.
business. That years ago, I helped them buy this location, and I was thinking to myself at the time, how are they going to make any money? Like the guys they're buying from are making no money. They're buying this thing and they didn't pay a lot of money for it. They paid some good money for it, but not crazy. And then they took this thing over. Well, the other guys must have been sleeping on a daily. I mean, these people have been so busy and have grown so fast. I think the husband went for training and had to come back early because they couldn't keep up with the business and the marketing. They're marketing to insurance companies and things like that. So sometimes it takes the right people to take
I've
over
had
stuff
clients
and,
do
and to
very well in that restoration space. Had another client in Charleston just signed with the restoration company last week. Servpro's the 800-pound gorilla, right? But they also help create an industry, right? And now there's
yeah,
enough
big
there's
time.
enough to go around. All these companies are getting
There's
their piece.
enough.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. No, that's a good example. Is that like home service kind of business? I guess it is, but you need a location, you need trucks, and you need kind of
In
both.
that case,
No
in that
retail,
case, because of the equipment and stuff, you'd probably have a location, not a customer
right?
facing
Like a
one. So it's more,
warehouse.
yeah, warehouse back end. A lot of the home services businesses don't require a physical location though. And people say, well, where do you park the van or park the truck? I tell them, hey, rent a
Right.
parking space from a local landlord where they've got good street visibility. That's a
Yeah,
billboard for
exactly.
you, right?
Right. Some of the gas stations and fix it shops allow you to rent space there and you leave it overnight, whatever. And it's right on the
Yeah.
main road, things like that. So when you talk about home, because I want to talk about like what's hot and what's out there, home services business. What kind of services are we talking
Yeah.
about?
Everything.
Like landscape, that or repairs
Yeah,
or
it's a combination. In some cases, it's recurring revenue, say like pool cleaning
okay,
or you know, uh,
okay,
lawn fertilization. In a lot of cases, it may
right,
be bigger ticket, like cabinets, or roofing or flooring. I'd say
refacing or something like that.
exactly, yeah, that as well. And a lot of these have competition. I mean, there's a space for them, but those are highly fragmented mom and pops. And here you're able to come in with a much more professional approach, white glove approach to a blue collar industry
Right,
is what I would call it.
right,
And so you're able to really differentiate. But there's just so many different niches out there. I mean, it's after the restoration happens, right? Well, what happens with all the contents? They've got to be taken care of, and refurbished. I just had a client sign today for a pressure washing business. Now, this one's very differentiated. The equipment they do a lot of commercial work, and again, that's an ongoing recurring revenue.
like power
Power
washing. We're
washing,
talking, right?
exactly.
Yeah, got
I
it. Okay.
had clients that are about to sign for industrial hoses. It's the largest industrial hose company out there. They work with,
Well,
I mean,
water hoses or
some of it's water, some of it's other types of piping, but they work with manufacturers and industrial. And so it's all these niches, and people love businesses that require fewer employees that deliver high return on investment. That's kind of the general theme,
yes, sure,
right? Um,
right,
some of the ones I like out there right now, are in different niches like logistics consulting, freight brokerage type work, where you don't have to have a team, but you're working with medium sized, large companies as well. And you
right.
become their go-to for shipping. And because you have the power of the franchise system and bulk buying, you're able to get all these great deals with UPS, FedEx, and DHL on the back
Which you
end.
couldn't do on your own. Isn't that that's traditionally what's been called freight forwarding, right?
Yeah, it's and but they expand it where it's also more logistics consulting. You're the subject matter expert. They train you up, and you don't have to have any background in this. Now, I'd say if you have some sales orientation, sales in your background, that probably gives you a leg
Yeah,
up, because there is some of that. But similarly, there's a great business out there that provides consulting for nursing homes and senior care facilities. So if you have a parent that you need to place in senior care, odds are it's the first time you've ever gone through the process.
Right. I know some guys who do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
They help you find the nursing home and find the right place that has the, some of them don't have a dementia unit, and your mom has dementia. Well, she can't go
yeah.
there. So they got to find the place, find a bed that's available, have a relationship. Yeah.
Exactly. And so there are those types of opportunities that really don't require any employees. There's some in the home services space where maybe you don't have to have a team on payroll, but they're more contract based where you're working with contractors, and they're incentivized to do a
Right.
good job for you because you're continuing to bring work to them. But so many different niches out there. I'd say the general themes are, non-sex. I joke that non-sexy is the new sexy. People like understandable cash flow in businesses. They don't want they're not looking for the latest trend.
Who cares?
I will say
Right. Yeah.
in health and wellness, there are some trendy type businesses, but things that McKinsey just came out with a study, talking about the different modalities within, recovery services right now, cold plunge and infrared and red light therapy and,
Oh, like
cryo.
cryo, jet, that
And they said,
stuff.
hey,
Yeah.
it's now mainstream and it's projected to grow at this rate, going forward. And so I think,
Right.
and we have clients that are getting into those types of businesses too. So there is some of that that's more fashion forward, but most people are gravitating towards, you know, youth soccer, or we've had clients do really well in the youth soccer space, or mobile.
Like running, like not camps, but training
Oftentimes,
classes,
in a lot
things
of
like
cases,
that.
they partner with the local league, and so they're providing coaching and extra practice time and camps and clinics and all of this.
Outside of the regular
Yeah,
coaching
I talked to
stuff.
a client of mine from Dallas last week. We were catching up, and he had a background in law enforcement, and got into youth soccer. Never thought he'd be in that space. Absolutely loves it. Has come back and bought more territory and expanded. And we've got. It was really cool. The CEO of the soccer company emailed me the other day and said, out of his top 10 franchisees, 3 were clients that we had placed with them, which I always love, just hearing the success stories of past clients of ours.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
everyone's at a different stage, but there's so many different niches where they're getting involved. And, probably 90% of those that we work with, Mitch, get into an industry that was never even on their radar to begin with.
Maybe you're getting your calendaring from one software and you're invoicing from another. Evenoo is a platform that we use as one of our sponsors to run our entire business. And there's other features like auto payments and integrations with QuickBooks. Visit evenoo.com, EVONUE.com to learn more. There's also a link in the show notes. And be sure to tell them that the Accidental Entrepreneur referred you. This podcast is brought to you by our affiliate sponsor, iEmployee. iEmployee is a virtual assistant service that hires almost anyone for any role in your company right out of the Philippines. Most roles range from $7 to $9 an hour for highly skilled and experienced VAs. And whether you need an executive assistant, social media manager, video editor, customer service, sales, you name it, they have it. We use iEmployee for our VA services, from editing and promoting the podcast to all the PR and promotion of our law firm. iEmployee acts as a virtual field supervisor on the back end with live video monitoring and reports on a daily basis with screenshots of your VA's workday, and along with complete HR and payroll duties. No more paying for overpriced and underqualified workers. There's a link in the show notes to get a 1-week free trial, and I encourage you to take advantage of it.
Right. They never even thought that was a thing. And there is competition. I think you mentioned competition before. I think competition is important, right? If you're the first guy to the table, well, okay, you're the first guy to the table. You're also the one who's like the test case. I mean, maybe there's no competition for a reason.
Exactly.
If there's money to be made, somebody's going to be doing it. Maybe not doing it well.
Yeah.
But somebody's going to be doing it,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, yeah. So I know you kind of touched on this stuff, but what are the kind of things that you see that people do wrong? Anything beyond like just the general comment of not following what we tell them to do? But
yeah, I'd say the biggest things are, people say, what makes a successful franchisee? And I say,
yeah, that's the opposite side
you've
of that
got to
question,
be
right?
halfway decent with people, right? I mean, that's just business 101. If nobody wants to work with you or work for you, you're gonna have an issue, right?
Definitely an issue, right?
You got to be a decent human being.
You're an asshole. You're not going to get very far in business. I think there's very few exceptions to that.
Yeah, but being willing to follow the system, which takes a degree of humility. Not everyone has that, right?
Right.
It is really interesting, Mitch. A lot of existing business owners will come to us and say, hey, for our next rodeo, maybe we try out a franchise. And what the feedback is to me is oftentimes, hey, that later on, it's, hey, that made my other business better,
because they learned better principles.
Exactly. So that's neat. But I'd say some of the things, you've got to be capitalized. I mean, you never want to be living paycheck to paycheck, stepping in. It's not that you have to
Right.
have a huge nest egg, but you need a little bit of cushion, right? Um,
Right.
you need to come in with the right expectations. And, that's why we just designed our discovery process the way we did. I mean, you get a lot of information before you ever purchase. You get to talk to other franchisees in the system. You get to review all the FDD, past historical things. We're consulting with them. We want them to be set up for success and not be surprised by
Yeah.
anything down the road. So I'd say coming in with the right expectations. I mean, a little bit of due diligence on their local market. I mean, the franchisor is going to provide them with some good information, but go out, do a little bit of secret shopping, know who the competition is, know how you're going to compete against them. Those are the kind of things that we prep our clients on how to go about that. But no, I think there are a lot of people out there that could be business owners that are, a little timid, and, it's understandable, right? It's a big decision. But the
Right.
feedback I consistently get is, I wish I'd done this sooner. I wish I'd stepped into business ownership earlier.
Sure.
And there is never, ever a perfect time to step into business ownership. There's always something you can point to as a reason not to. And I think a lot of people,
And also to do it. Right.
a lot of people
Absolutely.
consume a lot of content, and it makes them feel like they're in
Yeah.
the game, but they're not. They're dreaming about it, thinking about it, kicking the can down the road. And
I never pulled the
at some
trigger.
point, you got to pull the Band-Aid off, pull the trigger, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the things you struggled with when you were getting started in, I'm talking about, like, okay, you left the consulting world and you went out as a franchisee. Later, you said you got involved as a franchisor. So
Yeah.
what are the things that you look back and say, oh, geez, we're doing it differently
Yeah,
now?
well, I kind of glossed over this, to be candid. It was when we spun off, we started a company that was non-franchised. And so it was a business called 10x5, and it was a marketing agency and a call center. So the idea was we made the phones ring, and then we answered them on behalf of franchises, on behalf of franchisees. So, we built up the bit.
It was like lead generation for certain kinds of
As a third
franchisees.
party. And so we built it up. I was running the company with a partner. We had about 35 employees. We're doing a couple million a year. I brought some great talent on that team. They bought into my vision. And, I learned eventually that the model that I thought was there wasn't there. And, we were break even from a profitability standpoint. And, people had taken a pay cut to come work on my leadership team there. And we had a lot of fun for a little while, but ultimately I had to call a spade and recognize we were becoming too custom for each franchisee. And the model just wasn't there from a profitability standpoint. So I had to make a hard decision. It was my 40th birthday weekend. I was up in Washington, D.C., exhibiting at a conference. And I told my wife, I'm going to have to pull the trigger and
just pull the plug.
Pull the plug.
Yeah.
So we then found homes for most of our employees, most of our clients. So I'm very proud of how we handled it. But it was a difficult thing. I mean, from a pride standpoint as well. We didn't have a sexy exit. Instead, we wound down the company. But Mitch, that gave me, again, this was not a franchise business. This was my own business,
Right.
Startup. It gave me such an appreciation for the franchise model, because that is a proven model. There's more product market fit in a franchise,
Right.
Whereas I did not have that. And I thought I was smart enough to do it on my own. So it was humbling, but it also gave me more appreciation for franchising and what it provides.
Right. Well, you thought that creating a service business to provide services to the franchisees, I mean, there's a whole world out there, right? But you must have done like financial pro formas at the beginning, right? But it just didn't work.
Yeah, everything takes a little bit longer than expected, to get customers to say yes to onboard, how long it takes to onboard them. And then
Right.
probably our biggest downfall was we became too custom for every client of ours. And we would just found ourselves saying yes too often instead of staying within the lines. And that's where you can have success in franchising, is by staying within the lines.
Right. This is the way we do it every time.
A good franchisor is going to let you innovate, but they're not going to let you go too far out in left field. And that's where I was going with my, with my own business, too far out in left field.
Yeah. Look, good lesson for everybody. I mean, I think that's a common, theme, even as a franchisee, right? Okay, fine. If you're coming up with a couple of menu items or whatever, but does it still meet your, what I call, they say avatar, I don't like that word, but like your ideal client profile, right? Are these the people that we're doing business with, and we're going to do it this way, and let's not deviate, because these are the people we're trying to serve. And then if we're all over the place, if you walk into a franchise and the menu is totally different than the last one you were there, you're not going to think you're in the same same location or type of business. And I think a lot of people do that. They, like you said, you were trying to you were getting started, right? So everybody gets started. I'll do business with anybody. Okay, that I understand, but that shouldn't go on very long, right? Because at some point you have to be good at what you do. You have to serve at the marketplace, and as you niche down, right, to because I'm sure that particular business model, even though it didn't work, right, was better for certain kinds of businesses than it was for others, right? So just like my law practice, for example, I don't do everything, and I want to work with certain kinds of clients, and I don't. So I'm constantly turning people away, sometimes referring them to other colleagues. But I'm like, listen, I don't do that.
Yeah.
Could I do it? Yeah. But is it a good use of my time? Absolutely not. And I think a lot of us have trouble. I don't know if you agree with this or what your opinions are about it. That's a hard thing for people to like grasp onto, that being real specific about who you do business with actually helps your business grow, not the opposite.
I'm a huge believer, and that's why I wrote a book called Non-Food Franchising, and why I cut out I literally cut out half the market and said, let's go deep in the other half and be able to serve people better that way. I've got nothing against the food guys. We need them. We support them.
No, but that's what you think about. You think of McDonald's when you
Exactly.
think of franchise, but that's not what we're talking about. Hundreds of franchises have nothing to do with
So
food,
I'll be
right?
contrarian and cut out all those, all the food. And there's just easier ways to make money that require less operating hours, less employees, less capex, less susceptible to consumer
Yeah.
whims, higher margins. All the reasons why I like these other industries more. But we've got nothing against the food guys. We need them.
Yeah, I have a guy who was on my show. I think he was on my show already. He trains dogs, and he got very good at franchised. I have a guy coming on the show, also in the pet industry. They are yard cleanup businesses, and he's got several locations now, franchised. I think he's up in the Northwest or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's definitely an issue, right? Your whole backyard's like just a minefield of stuff, wait for the gardener to just shoot it all over the place. So yeah, but he, felt that I could franchise this, and I'm not going to manage 14 locations. That's crazy. And let other people do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if somebody's out there, right, and they're like, I'm going to get started, how do you start by kind of, let's assume they haven't employed you yet, right? So you haven't gone through the whole due diligence package and fill out, but they're kind of like, all right, I don't know what's out there. Is there a way for somebody to kind of do a broad glimpse of things that are going on in the industry, or they just got to like Google it?
Well, if you Google, you're going to come across the top 100 franchise list, the top 50 franchise list from different publications. All those companies are paying to be on the list. It's a PR move. There's so much noise out there. And even if you've come across a franchise you like, they may or may not be open in your area, or there may be something going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. So that's where we come in, and we can see behind the curtain. We've got the relationships. We know what's going on out there. And Mitch, it's entirely free to work with us. I'm essentially a real estate broker, but for franchises. So I get a referral fee from the brand. None of that's passed on to our clients. So it's entirely free to work with us. No commitment at all as well. But I'd say as a first step, I mean, I put together the book Non-Food Franchising 2 years ago, and we've gotten great feedback, sold thousands of copies. But I'm happy to share a free copy with all of your listeners, free downloadable copy if they just reach out to us.
Okay, well, maybe we could put a link in the show notes, and then people can put their info in, and they
exactly. But it's 90 pages, easy read, cover a ton of content around how franchising works. I share case studies. I share industries. We talk about the funding side of it. We talk about the FDD, the legal side of it. We cover everything. And so I'd say that's a really good first step. A lot of our clients have read it by the time we get on the phone. But I'm more than happy to jump on a totally free call with any of your followers to chat about franchising. I'm passionate about it, as you can tell. And like I said, entirely no commitment, no cost. And that's probably a good first step.
Okay, so as a fun question, right? What are some of the craziest franchises that you've seen, even if they're working, like what that I would be like, I never thought that would be franchisable?
Yeah. Well, this is the hottest one last year was and I don't like the term hot, but the most popular one last year was in the men's health space, testosterone replacement therapy clinics.
Oh yeah. High T.
I've had clients do very, very well in that business.
Is that like a supplement business?
Injections. And then they have supplements as well. But there's just, again, it's such a fragmented space. There wasn't a large company already doing it. And there's one that's,
you don't need to be a medical doctor to have a franchise, and
depending on some states. In most cases, you have to have an affiliation, but they help you line that up, and the doctor signs off on some paperwork every year.
Right. I know people have done like weight loss clinics like that. They needed a dietitian. They had to have someone on. There was a nurse, like an NP or something. I don't know.
As far as fun ones, I mean, the golf sector, there are different businesses starting up, with the golf simulators.
Yeah, I have a client open a golf cave. That's a franchise,
Who said
isn't
it
it?
again?
Golf cave. Golf
It could
cave.
be. I mean, again, there are a number of them. That's not
I think it's more local to here. It's
okay.
yeah, but it's a franchise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sunless tanning is a big one right now that's doing really well. I think, youth sports, swim lessons. We've got a great one.
How about esports? Like, is that
I'm sorry.
a thing like electronic? Where they're gaming, they teach the kids how
Yeah,
to
that's one
game
I
and stuff
haven't
like
personally played in myself, and I'm not a gamer, but no,
that. Right.
I've heard there's some noise about some activity over there. Music lessons for kids. When I think fun, I think of like kids, right? I just had a
Of
client
course.
that bought trampoline parks, 10 trampoline parks at about $3 million each. That was a big purchase.
They were existing.
No new ones.
Oh, so he set them up. He was a franchisee,
Yep.
and then he bought 3 locations.
Yeah.
That's got to be an insurance bill for you,
Yeah,
huh?
but they've got all that covered. Very well established franchise out there. And
Yeah.
these are kicking off 2.7 million of revenue a pop across the system average, with about 800,000 dropping to the bottom line. So big investment, big return. That's definitely higher than most.
That's indoor stuff, right?
Indoor.
Not outdoor stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen those before. You go up on the wall and the kids bounce all over
But
the place.
most of these service-based businesses you can get into all in, including working capital and franchise fee and startup cost, oftentimes in the 150 to 250 range. That's where we're seeing most. And a lot of our clients are using SBA loans to fund those. There's an old retirement plan through what's called the ROBS program. You can purchase it that way. So a lot of different ways to get involved.
That's self-directed IRA, right? That type of stuff using your
Similar
IRA
to
money.
a self-directed, but this way you can actually take a distribution, by paying yourself a salary. It's called ROBS, ROBS. It's a rollover plan for a 401k or IRA from a previous employer. Roll that over, set up the business as a C corporation, purchase the business with the retirement.
Yeah, it's a similar concept.
Similar idea. Yep, in theory.
Yeah. So you just said something. I was going to ask you a question. Oh, when you're saying the fees, you mean like all in, like you're talking, 150, 200. That includes, paying the initial fee to the franchisor, any build out you might need, equipment, whatever.
Correct.
Right?
And in a lot of those service cases, there's not going to be much build out. In a lot of those, you don't have a physical location, or also,
just need some equipment,
if it's a brick and mortar location, it's going to be a little higher than that on average.
Yeah. So what kind of fund? I know we're not SBA people, but yeah, I mean, like if somebody's buying into a franchise and it's a $200,000 startup, all told, how much of that can they finance?
Typically around 80%. I'd say what's very common, franchise fee within that is probably around 50,000. So they would pay the 50,000 at the time of signing, and then the SBA loan would hit their account and fund the balance.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think people don't realize that they can do that. And is SBA loans, they must be easier to get if you have a proven franchise model, right? Then you're just some guy starting up a business. They're like, yeah, that's not. And
we've got partners to help our clients with that. I mean, we do them day in, day out. It's banks prefer lending to franchises for obvious reasons.
Yeah, at least ones that are proven. Yeah, exactly. What are the kind of things that people should look for in a franchise? Or, I mean, we talk broadly like about support in the community, but are there more specific things that if I am, somebody's out there listening, maybe they're not working with you, but they're in the midst of evaluating something that they should be looking for as good signs or bad signs of a franchise?
Obviously, the financial model's got to be there. The competitive advantages have to be there. But looking at their history of the business, in some cases, it may be a newer franchise, but I still want to see good history of it operating as a single business. And I want to see not only industry experience on that leadership team, but also franchise experience. And maybe they had to bring someone on the team that has that. Supporting franchisees is a different animal. And to me, the older I get, the longer I personally invest in a variety of different things. I'm looking at who's at the top, and the people matter so much. And in franchising, this is going to be your business partner. So I'd say making sure it's good culture fit, making sure they've got that experience, that track record is huge. But you'll also talk to other franchisees in the system. I mean, that's huge.
I think people don't do that. Yeah, I think people don't do that as much.
Do that. It's what we call validation calls. And talk to the people that are living it day in, day out, and that's a great source of information. So again, between all of that plus the FDD, where you get a lot of, it's a big old legal document, but you get some good information. You get these different data points to kind of piece together, is this the right fit? And never be afraid to walk away from it if it's not. There's a lot of fish out there, and I always say date around before you get married. I just got off the phone with a client in Delaware who, they're pretty far down the road with a brand. They said, well, maybe we should talk to Jon before we pull the trigger. And I said, yeah, let's date around and look at a few other options, and I'm pretty confident they'll end up going with something else than what they're currently looking at. So, it's always good to compare and contrast.
Yeah, right. Don't fall in love with anything.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's going to be your head on the chopping block at the end of the day, where you have to be the one that says, we got to pull the plug on this thing. It's not working. I've had people that, need to sell locations, and it's not because of necessarily the franchise model is bad. It's just that there's something going on in their life that they just can't execute. Maybe they're not the best salespeople. Maybe they're not the best, people. I mean, you really have to, I don't think, and I don't know if you disagree or agree, happy to have you disagree, but I find that I've met people going into business, even franchisees, right? And they're just not the best at sales and marketing. And they think that they could just go out and hire somebody who working for them, who doesn't own the business, and they're out there driving business. And they've always struggled. Like, I think business development, it's a skill that you really have to pay, especially in the early days, attention to on your own, and support the people that you're bringing in. You can't just say, oh, I'm not good at that. And then you go and hire people and you're paying them and they don't care. They don't treat it like it's their own.
Yeah, I think just like with any key hires, I mean, how you incentivize them and then finding the right person, just trying to align your interests. I tell half of our clients start with a manager in place day one. It's what we call semi-absentee, semi-passive. I like to call it semi-involved. I think that's a better term. But the idea is the franchisor is, a huge resource to that person. It allows you to kind of focus on your other business or work. That is very doable. Half of our clients do it, but I tell them every time, I won't sugarcoat it. It comes down to having the right person in place. If you don't, you're going to find yourself leaning in a lot. It could create headaches until you do have the right person in place. But no, if you have the right person and you set up the incentives correctly, we've got clients that do it all day, every day. And I always love it when a client has sales in their background, even if they're not going to be tip of the spear, because to your point, they understand how to attract and retain salespeople, how to incentivize them. I've got plenty of case studies of clients that haven't had that have been able to hire successfully. So,
that's good to know, because I think that's the one area like you can get a bookkeeper, you can get an administrative person. That's easy to do, but bringing somebody in to do the sales and having them treat it like it's their own and being incentivized seems to be an area of struggle. Maybe you haven't had that experience. It's good to hear.
I think it depends on the business too. I think about Art of Drawers where, we're involved there, and I see firsthand, a lot of these franchisees didn't have a sales background, but they're hiring designers. Well, the designers, what we call designers, it's a very consultative sell. It's not like a hard sell. They're not knocking on doors. Instead, they're being invited, and the marketing is setting up these appointments for them. They go in, they have a conversation. Stay-at-home moms are a great salesperson for this business because it's very conversational. And how do you use your kitchen? And here's how we do. Have you thought about this kind of solution? And it's addictive for them because they close about half the appointments. And so they get a rush every time they do, and they get paid well when they do. And so they're highly incentivized. So I think it just depends on the business, but I know where you're going. I do think having sales in your background gives you a leg up just in business in general, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, anybody's listening, if they're going to start a business, franchisee, franchisor, your own business, standalone business, you better have that answered at the beginning. Like, don't start building up your franchise and working on your FDD. We'll talk about in a minute about how to, about franchising, how to become a franchisor, but you got to have that answer. You got to have the marketing and business development and sales answer before you do anything. Like, you and I could open a business, right? We can write the manuals. We can put the systems in place, do the menus and the website. I mean, we could do all that stuff. But if we don't have the answer of how do we drive sales, how do we get franchisees? How do we bring customers into the franchise location? How do we, then you're missing 80%. I mean, it seems like such a small part of the business, but it's the key to the business. And I think a lot of people, maybe it's, sales. Oh, I don't like selling. Okay, then don't do, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I see that. I've been a business attorney for 32 plus years. I've interviewed, 400 or 500 people on the podcast, all kinds of different walks in life. If they're not good at sales and they don't find a way to become comfortable at it, they struggle. Even if you're hiring people, you got to know what you're doing. I've had, that seems to be the one key that seems to be falling through the cracks is like people don't want to sell. They think of bad things about salespeople.
Yeah.
I've had salespeople on the show. They're not bad people. They're good at what they do. Sales is not about convincing people to come to your franchise and buy something they shouldn't be buying. That's not the case. It's to provide a service that people need, like you said, consultative, and you can figure a way to do it. But I think people start businesses, they invest money, right? They don't have that answer. They think it's going to come when they build it, and it all kind of fall together, and it doesn't. A lot of times. Maybe franchises help that,
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about if you have a business or you have a business idea, like how do you evaluate if you should franchise or if you shouldn't franchise? And obviously the world of the franchisor is very different than the world of the franchisee because you're selling to the franchisee, not to the general public. So what's been your experience there?
No, I think some of the key pieces. First, you got to be well capitalized, right? Because it does take money. And I think secondly, you've got to have some good history. The financials have to be attractive. Someone's got to want to buy into the business from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
If you don't have good results, then why would someone buy into it? But I think a big piece is just kind of that long-term vision. Like, do you have the staff in place to support franchisees, or are you willing to invest in that? The last thing you ever want to do is invite people in to become franchisees and then not be able to support them to the level they need to be supported. That's not good. And so I think, you're going to wake up and you need to set reasonable expectations of what you're going to be delivering to these franchisees and then live up to it. Because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of phone calls and a lot of headaches. And so, I always, in the same way on the other side of it, tell clients of ours, if it's a newer franchise, we're looking at the leadership team, we're looking at what are other owners saying, we're looking at the financial model, the competitive advantages. So flip that around on the franchisor side. You got to have those pieces in place. But there are a lot of businesses out there that I think it can make a lot of sense to franchise. It's a great way to scale, oftentimes quickly, using other people's money largely, and they've got skin in the game in their local market that they know so much better than just opening up a corporate location. They're funding it. They're incentivized to make it successful. You just have to be ready to support them. But I'll tell you what, private equity loves franchising, and they're investing in franchisors right and left.
Yeah, because they want to buy, 600 locations or whatever you have.
It's a beautiful model. And so as a founder, if you're thinking about an exit or your payday down the road, there's a lot of money to be made in franchising. So it can make a lot of sense as long as you cover those first pieces I mentioned.
Yeah, especially logistically. Like if you're, running a franchise in Tucson, Arizona, to open up one in Oregon and Seattle, it's going to be a little hard.
Yeah.
In terms of from a management standpoint, you got a lot of trust and things like that. But if you get a franchisee and you have the right systems in place. Now, I have found that when you, if you want to set up a franchise, or that just the legal itself could be $150,000. I mean, I've seen people pay more. Probably shouldn't have paid more, but and that doesn't include all the other stuff, right? Hiring the people and putting the systems in place. So, you do have, it's more of a capitalization event than it is if you're a franchisee.
Yeah. And I've got a partner that has helped a number of companies through the franchising process, and they can do it for about half that price. And
I've seen for 50.
Yeah, and that includes like the operating manual, some of the collateral, and you really get them all set up. So it does vary out there, but I'm more than happy. I don't personally take companies through the process, but again, I've got a partner that does, and I'm always more than happy to have that conversation with someone who's thinking about franchising their business. I'm just passionate about the industry, and I love seeing the different models that get franchised.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned this before. How many franchises do you own right now?
3 on the franchisee side, 1 on the franchisor side.
And they're all out in your area, the Atlanta area? Or
no. The franchisor is the franchisee ones. I've had franchises in the Atlanta area, but right now, one's in Minneapolis, one's in New York, where I invested with a client of mine, and then one that I own 100% of is down in Delray, Florida. But no, so those first 2 I've got partners on, and the one in Florida, it's just me.
You're not flying all over the country.
Yeah, but we have someone running it down there.
What does the franchisor do?
Custom pull-out shelving for kitchens, pantries.
Oh, that's the one. Right. But that's not
Shelf
Genie.
So Shelf Genie created the
Shelf
industry,
Genie's
just like
before.
the Serve Pro example. This is the second
Yeah.
player in the industry, and it's raising all tides. I mean, Shelf Genie's doing great as a result of this as well. But yeah, Art of Drawers, and I mean, we've been off to the races. Just incredible people we've attracted in the franchise system.
Is like California Closets, like, is that a
That's actually a
competitor of
really
yours,
good
or no?
analogy. No, it's not. But California Closets created the custom closet industry, and now you've had all these other entrants into it because it's a large
Yeah.
space. In the same way, Shelf Genie created the custom pull-out shelving industry, and now Art of Drawers is kind of the second mover in that space, and it's doing great.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you're one of the leaders in the business, you actually want other competitors to come in, right? Because it gives you more credibility. I mean, there's no, like, California Closets can't service the whole industry. It's not
Right.
possible. So, there's always room for, I think that's a part of the evaluation, right? Is there room in this business to, for other entrants to make more money? And as a franchisee, I don't need 50% of the marketplace.
Yeah.
I probably don't need 5% of the marketplace, right? If I'm dealing with the whole country. Now, were there some franchises that you're selling internationally and you're doing business, or they're mostly in the United States because of the franchise laws?
Yeah, so we focus just on the U.S. and Canada. We do have a good number of clients in Canada as well. We just brought, I say we, others did, I've helped them, but brought a great business from the UK over. We're now bringing a second business. So ones that have rich history over there. One's in the swim lesson space. One is in that freight brokerage logistics space. And so, very transferable to the U.S.
But they do have to file here. The franchisor has to basically start over and file here, FDD, the whole thing.
Set up a headquarters here and such. Yeah.
And you can, if you're doing business in a state, you have to be filed in that state, right?
Correct. And there's 37 states where that's not an issue. There's 13 where it takes longer to get approved. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. But you can start with the easy ones.
Exactly.
And then, also depends on what your franchise is, right? If it's a snowboard business, you can't do it in Texas and Florida, right?
Wouldn't be smart.
So, all right. What other things am I missing when it comes to franchising for people that are
I think we covered a lot of topics there. So again, just more than happy to help any of your listeners. Would love to share a free copy of Non-Food Franchising, our book, free downloadable copy. Just come out to our website, frambridgeconsulting.com. But no, I think we covered funding. We covered the different industries. I think just the nuances of franchising. I think it was a very candid conversation that we had around things to think about and no, more than happy to carry the conversation forward with anyone that's listening that may have an interest in dipping a toe in the water.
Yeah. Well, for anybody out there, I think that more business owners should consider franchising, especially if they're, it's really not their background. They were in corporate, they're doing something, they want to get started, maybe a different industry. Don't go at it alone. I mean, find people that have, done well. I mean, if you can't find a franchise in whatever you're doing, then find somebody who's done it and talk to them about it. But, that's one of the problems is people try and do it themselves and think it's no big deal. And it is a huge deal. But we've already said high failure rate with general businesses. We don't know the statistics. We're not going to guarantee anything, but definitely higher success rate with the good I mean, let's carve out the bad ones. There are ones that are out there. They're small. They're not supportive, but those are few and far between, I think. I'm not right. Most of the industry is pretty well put together. It's well regulated and stuff. Well, Jon, I can't thank you enough. I would say it's earlier where you are, but you're not. You're in Atlanta, so it's same time, 11:30. And let's keep it going. Keep helping people and keep opening franchise. I'm always excited to see what's moving into our town next.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed the conversation.
All right, Jon, appreciate it.
In addition to being a podcast host, I'm also a small business attorney, mostly providing legal services in New York and New Jersey. With over 3 decades of experience, we can handle most transactional issues. So if you're watching the show and you encounter some sort of legal issue, reach out to us and visit our website, mindhackerlaw.com. Thanks for tuning into the show and for continuing to support us.